Hello there! Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and I hope you're well. I'm very well, thank you very much, and so delighted to be with you on part 3 of this story tonight. And what a fascinating story it is. Unfortunately, Suzanne Chambers is beginning to realise that her daughter is getting up to things behind her back that she doesn't like. And she's very concerned about the influences of a very, very unfortunate woman called Mrs. Ferguson, who dresses very inappropriately. And so she is very concerned about getting her daughter away from this woman. So we're going to find out what happens next in this story. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's continue with part 3 of our story tonight. Of course, I know you're right about all that, Nina. But I've just had an idea. Rather a good one, if you must know. I want you to hear me out on this, will you, dear? I don't know why I didn't think of this before. I'm curious, ma'am. What is it? Is it possible for you to take any time off work? A few days, perhaps. It really would be really helpful if you could do that, love. What are you thinking exactly, ma'am? I'm thinking that Blakely needs her grown-up sister to speak some words of wisdom to her, to give her some salient advice without her mother being around. You know Blakely. She'll never listen to me. Most teenagers have a derangement syndrome when it comes to their own parents. But you, Nina, Blakely always listens to you. You could talk to her about her life, about everything that she's been getting up to of late. You could mention that she's far too young to get involved with anyone at her age. Discourage the idea of her doing such a thing, let alone taking birth control pills. I was thinking that I could pay for the both of you to get a cabin somewhere really delightful. I could look for a place close to Yellowstone National Park if you like. Marvellous area it is, so much indigenous wildlife, spectacular fauna and flora, as well as wonderful walking trails. And it's only a 6-hour drive from Idaho. I'll pay for everything, of course, because I'm asking you to do the special favour for me, so it's the least I could do. I want you to knock some sense into that daughter of mine. Make her see sense, Nina, will you? Help her see that she needs to enjoy herself before thinking about getting serious with any boy. You could spend some time in the wilderness together. I think Blakely would appreciate spending time with her big sister, and I know she adores the Yellowstone National Park. You know as well as I do. She thinks the world of you. And if anyone can knock any sense into that daughter of mine, it is you, Nina. I know it is you. I have faith in your ability to do this. And right now, as far as I'm concerned, you're my only hope. Your sister thinks I'm the worst mother in the entire universe, so I'm not exactly in her best books at the moment. Nor am I someone that she's inclined to listen to. But she'll take notice of anything you have to say, Nina. I'm quite sure of it. I appreciate the voice of confidence, Mum, but I hate to say this to you. Blakely's going on holiday with her sister is a small consolation prize, as opposed to going away with her very best friend on an all-expenses luxury trip to Brazil, which Blakely had been telling me about for quite a while now, Mum. You're right about that, Nina. I'm not Blakely's favourite person right now, as we both know. I will not have Blakely spending any more time in the Ferguson household. Not on my watch. If Blakely wants to spend any time with Eloise in the future, it'll always be under my roof, so that I can keep an eye on those teenagers like a hawk. I don't want Blakely going down the wrong path, or ending up pregnant before she's even finished school. And that's the way things are heading, if I don't watch every step she takes. All I can say is thank God I'm a nosy, very intrusive and discerning mother, or I might not have found those pills at all. God forbid. Ma'am, I'm sure I can get the time off. I'll speak to my boss, Mr. Finchley. He's an agreeable man, and he's got teenagers of his own. 3 teenage daughters, I believe it is. So when I tell him your concerns over Blakely, I'm sure he'll let me take time off. I think going somewhere close to Yellowstone National Park would be the ideal thing for us to do. and I'd seriously enjoy spending time with my little sister, even though she's much more outdoorsy than I am. I prefer to stay indoors and read a book personally. But I'll go out on a limb for you, Mum. I'll take her down some fabulous walking trails, and we'll have a great deal of fun together, I'm most sure. And don't you worry, I'll speak to her about absolutely everything, and I'll be as tactful as possible. And by the time she comes home, she won't see another boy. Well, she won't be interested in seeing a boy, nor will she ever think of taking birth control pills. Not if I've got anything to say about it. Oh, what a relief, Nina. I knew I could trust you. I don't know how to thank you for all of this. When you were a teenager, life was so much easier with you. You never gave us any trouble. But Blakely is as volatile as a volcano. And if I poke her any more with my criticisms and well-meaning advice, that volcano will surely erupt. Don't worry, Mum. Consider your problem all sorted. Suzanne felt such relief when her call with Nina had finally ended. Nina was such a trooper. She knew if anyone could make Blakely see sense, it was her daughter. If the two of them could spend some girly time together, then maybe Blakely might finally see the light. All of a sudden Suzanne saw Blakely walking towards the car, with her satchel slung haphazardly over her shoulders, and a cranky, bad-tempered expression written all over her face that was so sour it could have curdled milk. She reluctantly opened the car door and slunk into the passenger-side seat next to Suzanne, not even acknowledging her mother, as she rudely stared out of the passenger-side window to avoid her mother's gaze. It was clear she was sulking, and you could have cut the tension in the SUV with a knife. So it's officially your school holidays, Blakely. Isn't that lovely? School closed for the summer, said Suzanne, starting up the engine of her SUV. Isn't that nice, love? You've got carefree days ahead of you, have you not? Where the alarm is not going to dictate your weekly life any more. What life? You've ruined my life, Mum. Thanks to you, I'm not going to Brazil in the morning. And it's all your fault, because you're so mean. Your life is not ruined, Blakely. Goodness gracious me, stop being over-dramatic. It's not the end of the world that you're not going to Brazil. I was going to Brazil, Mum, but not any more because of you. I was going to spend time on the beach. Time with my best friend, but you've ruined everything as usual. You always ruin everything. You're so horrible, and I hate you, said Blakely, turning around to glare at her mother furiously. Blakely, I'm very well aware of the fact that you hate me. But the good news is that I love you, although I don't particularly like the way you're behaving at the moment. Anyway, I've got some even greater news for you. You will be going away in a few days' time. Isn't that good news? What? You're sending me off to boot camp to straighten me up? Is that it? No, of course not. Where did you get that idea from, love? I wouldn't do that to you. You're going somewhere very nice and you're going to have an awfully good time. But I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to go to Brazil. I want to go to Brazil with Eloise. I want to go to the beach there. We were going to have so much fun. We planned it all. But you ruined everything, like you ruin everything always. Well, I don't think I've ruined everything for you, love. I think you're being overdramatic about that. I'm organising for you to go and stay in a cabin close to the Yellowstone National Park. Isn't that wonderful? You've always loved that part of the world, have you not? I don't want to go to a place close to Yellowstone National Park. I want to go to Brazil with Eloise. Don't you get it, Mum? Or are you so dim? I told you I would not take those birth control pills. I told you I wouldn't wear revealing clothes or skimpy bikinis, and that I wouldn't get involved with a boy. I promised you I wouldn't do any of those things, but you're still not letting me go. Why don't you trust me? I don't trust Mrs. Ferguson. It's not a question of not trusting you, love. I don't trust that woman. So you're not going to Brazil. Not under any circumstances. Why not? Why are you so mean? Because, as I keep telling you, I don't trust Eloise's mother. Not 1 inch. I'm sorry, love. But you're going away for a few days with your sister. Nina is looking forward to spending some quality time with you. And the two of you are going to have a lot of fun together. I know you are. I'm going away with Nina, said Blakely, unable to hide a spark of excitement that had lit up in her eyes. Blakely adored her older sister. But Nina doesn't like outdoor excursions. She likes to read, doesn't she? Would she really like going to a place close to Yellowstone National Park? That's not exactly her cup of tea, is it, Mum? You are going away, love, with Nina. And I'll have you know she's determined to show you a great time. So even though she's not an outdoorsy person, as you rightly say, she's going to try her best to be more active on this holiday. On your account. Isn't that great news? I suppose so, said Blakely rather glumly. But I still wish I could have gone to Brazil. Blakely's account. I'm ashamed to admit that when I was 16 years old, I was a belligerent, rather pugnacious teenager. I was the kind of obnoxious kid every parent would probably pray not to have, although I did have my moments when I could be quite sweet. I had not always been this disagreeable, but when I became best friends with Eloise Ferguson, after she had joined my school, I subsequently spent a lot of time at her home, and I found myself being rather influenced by the unfortunate company I was keeping at Eloise's home. And by that, I don't mean Eloise, I mean her mother. I'm afraid to say Eloise's mother, Laura Ferguson, had a mouth on her like a dirty sewer, and she could swear like a sailor. At first, when she used such foul language in my presence, I was visibly taken aback and exceedingly offended. But when you hang around someone for long enough, I guess you get climatized to their rough tongue. I'm glad to say my mother was never witness to this side of her character, for she would never have allowed me to spend time with my new best friend, if that had been the case. On the first day Eloise joined our school, I took it to courteously take it upon myself to show her around, to introduce her to various people, and from day one we hit it off and became almost inseparable. Eloise was exceedingly embarrassed about her mother Laura, and rightly so if you ask me. When I met Laura Ferguson for the first time, I was visibly shocked that a normal kid like Eloise could have a mother like Laura. It was like Mrs. Ferguson wanted the entire world to take notice of her, even if their reaction towards her was somewhat unfavourable. It was almost like she desperately wanted to be noticed, and she seemed to thoroughly enjoy it when people gossiped about her behind her back, of which I knew many of the mothers most certainly did. I had seen the mothers myself, shaking their heads at the school gates, when Laura Ferguson arrived, in her bright pink sports car, to pick up Eloise. I could tell no one approved of Laura Ferguson. Eloise would beg her mother not to get out of the sports car. She would say, "Please let me come to you. I don't want you to wait for me outside the school gates." But Laura Ferguson refused to listen to her daughter. "I don't mind you picking me up, Mum, if you wear something normal, and if you dress like the other mothers do. But when you dress in some of your skimpy, very trashy outfits, people are going to talk about you, aren't they?" "I like it when people talk about me," Laura Ferguson had told her daughter. "Don't you get that about me, Eloise? I've been insignificant for far too long during my life. Don't you see, if people are saying nasty things about me, it means I've been noticed. And there's no such thing as bad publicity, you know. I like to rough up people's feathers. I don't care if the mothers don't like me. I prefer men anyway, because they don't judge me like women so obviously do." I think Mrs. Ferguson liked to shock people, in the trashy, provocative way that she dressed. It was so embarrassing, especially poor Eloise. Sadly, there was nothing modest about the attire that Laura Ferguson would wear. Some of the kids in our class at school were really mean to Eloise. They made fun of her because of the way her mother dressed, so I really felt sorry for her. I mean, she couldn't help how her mother behaved. It was hardly her fault, was it? They called Eloise's mother a skank and a whore, words like that. I think Laura Ferguson thought she was sexy, but in truth she looked ridiculous for a woman of her age, approaching her late 40s. I felt so desperately sorry for Eloise having to put up with the kids at school, incessantly teasing her about her mother. One kid said to Eloise, "Would your mother's breasts burst like a balloon if I popped them with this pin, do you think?" And everyone sniggered and laughed at such an absurd suggestion. So all the teasing made Eloise feel so dreadfully small, so humiliated. I would tell Eloise not to take notice of the other kids, and that they would soon lose interest in teasing her about her mother, and pick on someone else. And with time, I'm glad to say, the sniggering did subside. Eloise told me that her mother had numerous surgeries because she'd always felt so desperately insecure about her body, as when Eloise's father walked out on them, insisting upon a divorce, Laura Ferguson took it brutally hard and was utterly convinced her husband had left her because she wasn't sexy enough for him. Where she got that weird idea from, I'm not sure. As a consequence of these feelings, it would seem that Laura Ferguson went to the ends of the earth to transform her body, but her new look was so over the top, and her huge inflated breasts were so disproportionate to the size of her body, it made her look utterly ridiculous, rather like a cartoon character. My mother was cool about me spending time at Eloise's home, as other parents wanted to keep their kids well away from that woman, as did my father, of course. But my mother believed that people were judging Laura Ferguson too unfairly and rather harshly, and that underneath it all, Laura Ferguson was not all that bad. But she'd have certainly changed her mind had she heard Laura cursing like a sailor, that's for sure. She believed Laura Ferguson was a woman desperately looking for validation, and she probably was. I think my mother was right about that. This is because, having spent time at Eloise's home and watching her mother's idiosyncratic behaviour with a curious fascination, I noticed that Laura Ferguson would regularly entertain some very creepy men at the house, who would have eyes on stalks when they saw Laura Ferguson's chest. These men would swoon over her like bees around a honey pot, and Laura Ferguson loved all the fuss and attention. It made her feel very desirable. I think with her new assets that had cost an absolute fortune from the plastic surgeon's office, she wanted to flaunt what she had as much as she could, like some people might flaunt a very expensive car, I suspect. One day Laura Ferguson was in town shopping with both me and Eloise, and we accidentally ran into her ex-husband, Barry Ferguson, who nearly fell off his perch when he saw his ex-wife for the first time in a long time. He barely recognised her. His face drained of all its colour, and he didn't look remotely impressed by the dramatic changes Laura had made to her appearance. At first he said, "Is that really you, Laura? Is that you?" And Mrs. Ferguson had laughed and chuckled and twirled around and asked him if he liked her new look. Barry looked at her in absolute horror and said, "You look trashy, love. Why on earth did you do this to yourself? Are you completely insane?" I think Laura Ferguson really believed her ex-husband would find her irresistible after all her surgeries, but instead he looked horrified by what she'd done to transform herself. Eloise was utterly thrilled, of course, to see her father again. She ran into his arms and cried on his shoulder. I noticed Eloise's father was tearing up. He was so elated to see his daughter again. "I've missed you so much, Eloise. You have no idea," he told her. "I'm so sorry, love, you haven't wanted to see me, and I can understand why you've been so angry. Your mother said you needed time to get over the divorce." "But, Dad, that's not true. Of course I'm not happy you divorced, Mum. But I want to see you. I always want to see you." In that moment I guess we all knew that Laura Ferguson had been lying to her daughter all along, when she had told Eloise that her father wanted nothing more to do with her, and had moved on with his life. It had all been a lie. "Why the hell did you mislead our daughter like this? That's not a kind thing to do. You clearly gave her the impression I didn't want to see her, and nothing could be further from the truth. Why on earth did you lie, Laura?" "I'm so sorry," said Laura Ferguson, at least having the grace to flush a red colour. "I just didn't want Eloise leaving me and going and living with you and your new wife. I didn't want any of that happening." "I thought we agreed on a joint custody arrangement, Laura," said Mr. Ferguson, looking exasperated. I need to know, Barry, and I'm going to ask you here and now, since I've bumped into you on the street like this. Otherwise, I'm never going to ask you. I need to know why you ended things between us. Laura demanded to know. I thought we had a very good marriage. I was very happy. But you walked out on both of us, demanding a divorce from me. Why did you do that, Barry? I figured it all out, you know. I've had plenty of time to think about it all, and I now know exactly why you left me. You do? Asked Barry Ferguson, looking somewhat bemused. So why did I leave you, Laura? Why don't you tell me? It's obvious, isn't it, Barry? I wasn't sexy enough for you. You didn't desire me. Why do you think I've gone to all this trouble to transform my body? It's because of you, Barry. Eloise's father went on to say that he had never left Laura based on the way she looked. Far from it, in fact. But he'd simply left her because he'd been incredibly miserable during the course of their marriage. He claimed Laura had been so preoccupied with herself and had invested little in their relationship, doing so little for him, showing him so little consideration and thought. Everything about our relationship was about you, love, he told her. It was so superficial. Sometimes I felt as if you didn't even notice me at all. I loved you very much, don't get me wrong, Laura, but love wasn't enough. I also loathed all the swearing and the foul language you used every day. It would drive me nuts. No woman should speak like that. Don't get me wrong. I've always found you to be an attractive woman, Laura, so I didn't leave you on that account. I left you because things weren't working out between us. And now look at you. You've had all these ridiculous surgeries. Laura's father told us he was glad he'd bumped into us because he missed Eloise, and he'd appreciate spending more time with his daughter, but Laura Ferguson had been trying to stop her from having any contact with her dad. Eloise wasn't angry with her mother's betrayal. I think she was just relieved that her father wanted a relationship with her and had never rejected her, as Laura Ferguson had made her believe. And from that moment on, I was pleased to see that Eloise spoke to her father every single day on the phone. She had already spent a couple of weekends at her father's home and got to know her stepmother Katie rather well, along with her 3-year-old sister Lena, and she told me in the greatest of confidence that she'd really like to live with her father, but she didn't want to hurt her mother, so she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I didn't have much time for Laura Ferguson myself, but I put up with her unorthodox over-the-top ways so that I could spend time with my best friend Eloise. So we alternated between spending time at each other's houses. I was exceedingly excited that Eloise's mother, Laura, had invited me to join them on an extravagantly all-expenses-paid beach holiday to Brazil. Thankfully, after much arguing between my mother and father over this matter, my father finally agreed to let me go, but he wasn't at all happy about it. He made no secret of his disapproval of Laura Ferguson, describing her as a loose cannon that could not be trusted. I was quite confounded when Laura Ferguson took me and Eloise one day to town to buy clothes for our beach holiday to Brazil. The clothes she bought us were rather shocking. They included skimpy bikinis and skirts so incredibly short you'd be scared to bend down to touch your toes. I certainly didn't want to dress like Mrs. Ferguson, and nor did Eloise, especially as at school everyone described her as the quintessential whore. But she was so excited about buying us all these clothes that I never intended to wear, but it seemed rude to refuse her, so I gracefully accepted the stuff she brought me, knowing full well that I wouldn't be seen dead wearing such revealing clothes. For one, I didn't have the confidence to do so, and two, I think some of those clothes would have made me feel extremely trashy. I brought the clothes home and surreptitiously hid them in the back of my closet, wondering how Laura could ever imagine I'd wear something so skimpy. Needless to say, my mother found the clothes I had hidden very discreetly, and was so enraged with me, she quite literally blew a gasket. I didn't have the opportunity to say, "Hold on a minute, Mum. I don't intend to wear those clothes. I agree with you. They're tarty." Instead, my mother, in the quintessential style of most mothers I rather suspect, jumps to all kinds of wild conclusions. I didn't bother to correct her. I mean, what was the point? I remember my mother picked up the stringy bikini that Mrs. Ferguson had brought me. My face flushed with embarrassment. "Look at this, Blakely! What on earth is this?" my mother shrieked. "Is this a bikini? Because it certainly doesn't look like one. There is no material on this thing. I can't believe anyone would actually sell this to someone. What are you buying? A piece of string? Don't tell me you were going to wear this on a beach in Brazil. This is going nowhere near your body, Blakely. Do you understand me?" My mother's whole body was visibly shaking with indignation. Her face had grown furiously red with anger, and she was literally stomping around my bedroom like an angry bull on steroids. She took the clothes Mrs. Ferguson had brought me, marching out of the house, getting into her car, and coming back to the house telling me later that she'd dumped the clothes at a dumpster, as no one with a shred of decency would dare to wear anything so revealing. Of course I agreed with her on this, but I wasn't about to admit it. Not for a second. I was not happy about my mother interfering in my life and telling me what I could or could not wear, so I got rather defensive about those clothes. I guess it was easy for my mother to falsely conclude that I wanted to wear such revealing clothing, which is far from the truth. Imagine my immense shock one day when Mrs. Ferguson escorted me and Eloise to the birth control clinic, only to get contraceptives before our holiday to Brazil, just in case we chose to be intimate with a boy on the beach. Mrs. Ferguson lied to the woman at the clinic and pretended we both had boyfriends and were sexually active, which wasn't true, of course. She told me and Eloise it was best for us to be prepared for any eventuality. In truth, I had not given any thought of getting involved with the boy, not even a passing thought, until Laura Ferguson encouraged us to get those pills. All hell broke loose in my household when my mother stumbled upon those pills in my nightstand. Indeed, you'd think I'd murdered someone and buried them under my floorboards. Such was my mother's anger. I don't think I've ever seen her look so incensed before. I'll never ever forget the way she looked at me, as the colour drained from her face, and she went an ashen white colour. I thought in 1 second she'd pass out in front of me, faint from the shock. She said to me, "What on earth are these?" I could, of course, have lied to her, but she already knew what they were. So I told her the truth. I didn't really have a choice in the matter. "They're birth control pills, Mum," I said, unable to look her square in the face. I felt rather like a dog, shamefully being dragged to its own vomit, and having my nose rubbed in it. It was desperately humiliating, and I don't mind admitting I felt utterly ashamed. "Where the hell did you get these from, Blakely? And I want an answer right now," said my mother, holding up the birth control pills in her hand and shaking violently. "You're a kid, Blakely. You may think you're all grown up because you're 16 years old, but you've got a long way to go before you're old enough to really know what you're doing. You're not emotionally mature. You're not physically prepared to have a relationship with someone at your age. I know some 16-year-old girls fall pregnant. Some fall pregnant at 14. But I'd have hoped my own child would not be like that. I wanted you to have a childhood, for goodness sake. Please, God, don't tell me you're taking these. And don't tell me you've been with a boy. Please to God you haven't been with a boy, Blakely, have you?" Seeing my mother's expression so distressed actually made me burst out laughing. Either that or I'd have burst into tears. Of course, my mother wasn't amused when I started to laugh. I finally comforted her by reassuring her, "Mum, keep your hair on, will you? Relax. I'm not taking those pills, and I haven't been with a boy. If you're not taking these birth control pills, then tell me, what are they doing in your nightstand? Explain that to me, Blakely. Nobody gets birth control pills for no reason. Why do you have them? I don't want you to lie to me, Blakely. Are you seeing a boy? I need you to tell me the truth. Have you been seeing someone at the Ferguson household? Or has one of Mrs. Ferguson's boyfriends tried to be intimate with you? Because if they have, they're in serious trouble with the law. Do you understand that?" "Ma'am, I told you I'm not seeing anyone. I don't have a boyfriend, and none of Mrs. Ferguson's boyfriends have been paying me any attention, if that's what you're worried about. I can't possibly compete with Mrs. Ferguson, Mum. Surely you know that. My chest is so flat you could eat food off it. Well, I suppose that's a relief. But if you haven't got a boyfriend, what are you doing with these pills in the first place? Explain that to me. If you must know, Mum, Mrs. Ferguson took me and Eloise to the family planning clinic. I was also shocked, I explained. She said we might need those pills for our trip to Brazil, in case we met boys on the beach. But I promised you, Mum, I wasn't going to take them, nor was I going to do anything with a boy, nor would I have worn any of those sleazy clothes she bought for us. Let me tell you, those words made fire come out of my mother's mouth, like a dragon. She was as mad as a March hare. I naturally got defensive, but when she told me that I wouldn't be going on holiday with the Fergusons after discovering the pills in my nightstand, I guess I really lost it, and I'm afraid some of the curse words I'd heard Mrs. Ferguson spout out in her own home I adopted for myself and used on my mother, and my mother became even more irate, telling me that I needed to clean my filthy mouth out with soap and water. Your father was right about that dreadful, dreadful woman. Who does she think she is? Taking you to a family planning clinic behind our backs. If she was here right now, I would kill her myself. And I'm not joking either. And where did you learn to curse like a sailor? Oh, let me guess. Laura Ferguson taught you to speak so dirty. In her case, the book is very much like the cover, it would seem. The woman is foul from the inside out. And I'm most angry with myself for allowing you to spend time at Eloise's home. Very angry indeed. Don't be so dramatic, Mum, I hissed at her. They are just pills, that's all. It could have been worse. You could have found a stash of cocaine in my nightstand. That's not the point, Blakely. It's a small relief that it's not cocaine. Don't you get it? You're 16 years old. You should not be taking contraceptive pills at your age. If your father knew about this, well, there are no words. I called my mother every foul name I could think of and told her how much I hated her. I was devastated not to be going to Brazil. I didn't have any intention of getting involved with the boy, nor taking birth control pills that Laura Ferguson had organised for us. I told my mother as much, but she didn't believe a word of it. She really believed that Laura Ferguson was encouraging us to become exactly like her. But what she failed to understand is that me and Eloise wanted to be nothing like her mother. I was grateful that my mother never told my father about the birth control pills, because let's just say he'd have probably murdered Mrs. Ferguson on the spot. When my mother told me I was going to be spending a week of the summer holidays at a cabin near the Yellowstone National Park with my sister Nina, it was bittersweet, of course, because I had been looking so forward to the trip to Brazil. Even so, I loved my sister Nina enormously, so the thought of spending time with her was very thrilling indeed. I remember my mother was heartily relieved to see the back of me when I left our home in Idaho to embark on the 6-hour trip to our due destination. Of course I wasn't stupid, even though my mother lightly thought I was. I knew why my mother had organised this trip for me. I'd figured it out. She wanted me to spend time with my older sister. She probably wanted Nina to knock some sense into me. It wasn't long before Nina, during our road trip, brought up the sensitive topic of the birth control pills my mother had found in the nightstand. Mum's very upset with you at the moment, Blakely, she said rather gingerly. But then I suspect you know that already, don't you? Mum is so unreasonable, I told her scathingly. She doesn't understand what she's talking about. She thinks she knows everything. She's accusing me of all kinds of stuff that I'm not guilty of. I can't help it if Eloise's mother is super weird. It's not my fault she dragged me and Eloise off to the family planning clinic to get pills. It wasn't our idea. It was hers. I know all about that, Blakely. And word of advice, if I was you, I wouldn't spend any time at Eloise's house. I think that mother of hers is super strange. You don't want to be around a woman like that. She's not a good influence on you. And what about those skimpy clothes she bought for you? You weren't intending to wear them, were you? And I hope you weren't intending to take those pills. Of course I'd never have taken those pills. Why would I take them? I don't want to be intimate with a boy. I'm too young for that. And also, I would never have worn those clothes. They were far too skimpy. Well, I'm glad to hear it. You're far too young to be taking pills and getting involved with boys. When I was your age, I was extremely naive, Blakely. But believe me, you need to enjoy your life. Study hard at school, stuff like that, before you think about boys. Now let's change the subject, shall we, and focus on our holiday. Where exactly are we going? I asked, relieved that the uncomfortable subject was at long last behind us. Mum booked a cabin for us online. It really is out in the sticks, I'm afraid, in a heavily wooded area where there's a lot of indigenous wildlife, which I'm sure you'll like. I understand the owner has not used the place in years, so it's been pretty much abandoned. But her daughter suggested her mother fix the place up for holiday makers who are visiting the Yellowstone National Park. I guess she wisely realised that this was the quintessential opportunity for them to make money. Mum spoke to the young lady on the phone, and she told us we would be the first people to use the cabin. In years, I believe. She hired workmen to move away a lot of the overgrown shrubbery in the wooded area, so that the guests could easily enjoy walks in the woods, which I understand are exquisitely beautiful. She says there's a creek in the woods and an abundance of wildlife. She reassured me that the cabin was inspected to see that it was suitable enough for holiday makers, and she said she'd made the place very cosy with hot water facilities and Wi-Fi, so you won't be missing out on anything. She also asked me what shopping we would require, so she's ordered all our food, which she's packed away in the cupboards there, as well as the refrigerator, which is very good of her. But we're the first people to be staying at this cabin, so I think she's hoping we're going to give her a good review, but I'm sure we will. The cabin sounds amazing, although I dare say it will be somewhat rudimentary, rather Spartan, because I understand that it's an old miner's cabin. Well, I guess if I owned a cabin not too far away from Yellowstone National Park, I'd certainly view it as an investment, certainly an opportunity to make money. So I can understand why the woman did the place up. My thoughts exactly, said Nina. Now the question is, how do we find this place? Because it really is very hard to find. I'm told it's pretty easy to get lost. But with a GPS, of course, I teased. So there we are. That is the end of part 3 of our story. Part 4 is tomorrow night. I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.